Welcome to another episode of Close and Play with me, Sanjay Murthy. Today we're joined by a man who is a comedian and a cricket broadcaster. He made his name on the UK comedy circuit and at the Edinburgh Fringe. You'll hear him, you'll see him, you'll read him on BBC Test Match Special and the Asian Network. And he seems to live on X because I've seen quite a lot of tweets from him recently. Please welcome to the show, Mr. Aatif Nawaz. How are you?
I'm very well, Sanjay. How are you doing, mate?
Yeah, good, thank you. Yeah, X. I mean, I went off X and it was Twitter then, and I came back to X, and if every other tweet seems to be used. So how do you find it as a platform?
I use it just to sort of I grew up in that era where sort of you live tweeted stuff, so I kind of got into this habit of live tweeting cricket matches. I get posts from random people sometimes saying, like, "Why are you describing elements of a cricket match in so much detail? Like, you're not working for ESPN Cricket Info, you're not doing ball by ball anyway. What are you doing?" And I was just kind of like, well, that's just how I watch cricket. Like, I kind of watch and I write and I watch and I write, and I'm processing things, and often, like, I'll be sitting with a family member who's not that interested in the game, so I kind of have to put it out there and put a little thought out there. But it's just a little bit of fun. People sort of try to do this engagement farming thing these days. I'm not really like, that's not really interesting to me. Like, I just want to say stuff about cricket, so it's as good a place as any.
I was at this sport broadcast summit thing up at the Emirates a couple of days ago, and there was quite a lot around around YouTube and around other forms of media and how 16 to 34-year-olds engage with that more so than linear TV. And are you finding that your engagement on X, for example, is getting stronger and stronger because of that?
Sort of. Like, I try, like, a lot of the engagement is becoming more and more sort of negative and frankly just rude and toxic at times. So I try not to, like, my whole thing is like, every now and again a like-minded person will get in touch and we'll have a little back and forth and I happily chat to people. But generally, like, it's become a space where sort of people will very aggressively challenge your opinion on things that are, it's just cricket ultimately.
Yeah.
People will get quite aggressive in the way that they challenge it. So I don't know. I feel like there's a sense of entitlement in modern social media. I've seen a lot of people who used it a lot, just like me, sort of move away from it. I try not to really get into, like, I'll talk about politics on my other sort of outlets and things like that. But like for cricket, I've sort of kept it as like, it's almost like my space to go and play with cricket and just talk about cricket, a place to let my mind, that part of my mind, which is a big part of my mind, breathe. And so I just use it like that. I try not to take it very seriously. I'm not really like, I've got a monetized account, but it's not like, I'm not being funny, but like $20 a month isn't going to change my life. So, I'm not looking for that sort of gotcha clickbait moment or whatever, but I do try and share stuff. I've got a big sort of Pakistani cricket fan base there, so they inevitably want news and insight, and sometimes when I'll hear something or can verify something, I'll post it on there, and then I'll try and keep that sort of fan base updated. But I'll talk about really all cricket, like India, England, Australia, whatever, even sort of things like Hong Kong, Namibia, Japan, Japanese cricket. I think is very interesting. So I don't have any rules for myself other than just go there and say whatever's on your mind and try not to be libelous.
There's enough going on in Pakistani cricket generally to keep you occupied anyway, though, isn't there?
Yeah, absolutely. It's a lot. Like, I mean, I've got a very good friend who spends all of his time working on Nepalese cricket, and that's it. That's his whole thing. Nepal are not a full member nation. They don't have an insanely busy cricket calendar, but despite that, he can have a sort of full-time career as a Nepalese cricket or a Nepal cricket journalist and broadcaster. Cricket's huge, man, and it's weird and quirky. The spaces in cricket where people live and make a living, it's mind blowing.
Stuart Lord's a good mate of mine. Actually, he was our first guest on Close of Play, and it was just after they'd beaten the West Indies 2-1 in that T20 series. So he was bigging up the Nepalese, go Nepal, all that sort of stuff. But it's good though, isn't it? It's what?
It's a very good time to start a podcast.
Yeah, well, exactly. Well, yeah, the Nepalese Premier League's coming up. It's good to see, isn't it? Other countries sort of coming to the fore, and I was talking to Jared, actually, Kimber. He was on as well, and we were talking a little bit about the death of a gentleman and the and the big three. you know, if you like. And there's actually competition nowadays for some of those other places in the World Cup.
Yes, there is. I love that there's a 20-team World Cup now in T20 cricket, in men's T20 cricket. I love that, teams like Italy have a pathway,
Well, they're
to.
Australia at sea, really, aren't
Yeah, yeah. I mean,
they?
yeah. I happen to know there was a county cricket player wandering around trying to find out if anybody had any Italian ancestry at all, so they could
Who
participate.
was the guy? Gareth Berg played for them back in the day. Do you
He
remember
did.
when he
He
was at
did.
Middlesex? Yeah, yeah.
I mean, it was just fascinating. I didn't realize Emilio Gay had some Italian ancestry. I should have guessed with a name like Emilio, I suppose. But anyway, I mean, it's great. I mean, I always sort of, it's this thing I sort of grew up in the sort of 90s, and you sort of looked at football quite enviously. Like, look at this whole world playing this game. What you look at the FIFA World Rankings on their website, and it's like more than 200 countries, and you think like, man, wouldn't it be cool if cricket? And now sort of we have a version of that, and you sort of try and get around the sort of the reality of it, which is that a lot of it is South Asian uh, expats and things like that.
Yeah, diaspora, yeah.
I don't care, to be honest with you. If there's got to be like 18 Patels or 25,
Yeah.
like let's have the team anyway. Let's start from somewhere. Yeah, I love it. I want to see more and more teams play. I was staunchly against the two divisions of Test cricket idea. Like, I want more teams to be coming into the mix rather than fewer. Let's broaden the pool. Let's have weird, funky tours. Wouldn't it be great to? Could you imagine, Sanjay, like going on tour to America, like or an England USA Test series tour? Like, this is what I want to live in, a time where that's possible.
Patelistan could be a thing.
We could all work on
You
that.
know, a country. How did it all start for you then? Obviously, born and bred in London, and then comedy. You know, like I said at the beginning, UK comedy circuit and the Edinburgh Fringe. Were you funny at school?
Not especially. I was a performer for sure. Like, my whole thing was like I wanted to act. So I was always quite keen to get on stage to perform. I'm not an only child, but I'm the youngest child, and I've got a big gap between my older brother and older sister, 16 and 18 years respectively. It's I think I just longed for a bit of attention as a kid, and that translated. And as I got older and wanted to be a performer, get on stage. My high school teacher, Mr. Baker, thought I had some talent, and you know pushed me and gave me ideas and cast me in things and encouraged me to pursue it. It was sort of quite non-traditional at the time for an academic South Asian to pursue a career in the arts and things like that, because I was like quite good at my school studies and things like that. But I wouldn't say I was funny at school. Like, even sort of comedy, it was something I treated as a craft, something that I learned from scratch, really, because I was a performer. I understood the dynamics of performing. But comedy is like a very specific genre. It's a huge genre. It's a wonderful genre, but you gotta put time into to get it right. Even if you sort of got funny, but some people have funny bones and they're just naturally very funny. But like, you can be spontaneous to an extent. But the art of performing stand up comedy, like, you have to put in a lot of work and a lot of time and a lot of preparation, and in some cases even rehearsal. So like I yeah. So sorry. Short answer is no. I wasn't very funny at school. I wouldn't have thought so anyway.
I went to school with a famous comedian, and I'll tell you off screen who that was because of my next comment. That at school, he wasn't funny at all. And when it turned out that he was who he became, I was staggered, to be honest with you. How does this bloke ever become, how is he a comedian? And I'll tell you afterwards. But I can tell you the next name I went to uni with was Sanj Bhaskar. And
Nice.
him and Nitin Sawhney had this thing at college where they were the Bangra Boys, I think they were called, and it was just them dossing about on stage, basically. But we always knew that they were the direction that Sanj would go to. He was big Sanj, I was little Sanj at uni, and that he would go off and be what he became, especially with Goodness Gracious Me and stuff. So you could see that pathway, but for the other guy, you couldn't. But it's funny, and like you say, I mean, maybe the other person was actually a natural performer underneath everything, and it just came out later on in life.
Yeah, I mean, like, Sanjeev Bhaskar is a huge inspirational figure for me. Anyway, like, he was not just him, but the entire core cast, and actually the secondary cast of Goodness Gracious Me. Anil Desai, who was one of the
Mm.
recurring characters on that show. I ended up performing extensively with him and become very good friends with him. But I watched them and it was very inspiring. Like, like genuinely just being a South Asian kid, being able to see a show with brown people in it. Like, yeah, like decades later, I would have my own show on TV with brown people in it. But like, maybe it sort of subconsciously sowed the seeds in my mind that this is something you want to do at some stage. But always thought of them as very inspiring. Sanjeev Bhaskar, his whole career and his whole, like, what I really like about him more than anything else. But she's a very talented performer, comic timing, all that stuff. He's just a very nice man,
He's a
and
lovely guy. Yeah.
I don't know him personally, but he sort of has this personality of being a nice person, a well-liked person, a well-mannered person, good, yeah, just very charming. And that is something I think is very important. Like, that's something I've always prided myself on. Like, when it's all said and done and they're remembering me one day, more than anything, I just wanted to remember that he was a nice guy and, was always easy to deal with, like, just not, never awkward or, like everybody has their moments for sure. But I think, you know what I mean? I just want to be remembered as a nice person. I think that Sanjeev is one of the reasons that sort of
Yeah.
embedded itself in me.
Aatif Nawaz, what a diva. Not words you want to hear, right?
Anybody who didn't interact with me on WhatsApp would know.
Yeah. Sounds actually, to be fair, picking up the sound of Bhaskar tab, the 20-year-old Sanj and the 60-year-old Sanj are pretty much the same person. It hasn't really changed over those years. But I have to tag him a few times just so he knows we've been talking about him. So how did cricket come about? I mean, obviously you've loved cricket, and what was the was there a natural segue from being a comedian to being a cricket broadcaster?
Well, not really, because I wasn't a particularly successful comedian when sort of cricket happened by chance. I'd always loved cricket, always watch cricket, go to cricket, you know, firmly plugged into my county, which is Middlesex. I don't live there anymore, but it's still my county. And although I'm very grateful to Warwickshire for employing me every now and again, so just make that very clear. Yeah, I was playing in a charity cricket match. So there's a gentleman called Mervyn Ramsey who worked for the Lord's Taverners. And he, for whatever reason, found me interesting, maybe on Twitter or something, or he found a comedy clip of mine. But he found me interesting. He's a very nice man. And he invited me to come and play a game for the Lord's Taverners against a team called Test Match Sofa. I thought,
Oh, that's
okay,
Daniel Norcross and that
that's
stuff as
Daniel
well.
Norcross's thing, yeah, and
Yeah.
it had just started, so it was just like sort of in its infancy at that point, first 6 months maybe. But they'd organized this cricket match, and I went and played, and I think I was funny at the right times or whatever, and they just quite liked me. So Daniel's colleague at the time, a gentleman called Tom Clark, said to me, "You got to come on Test Match Sofa. Like, you're gonna love this." I thought, okay, that sounds like fun. Just commentating on cricket, right? Okay, and then I get this random address and I turn up and it turns out it's just some guy's house. And literally you're sitting on a sofa with a
Literally,
cricket
yeah.
screen, literally that, with mics and stuff. Jared Kimber's sitting next to me and I'm sitting there commentating and we're talking about like adult material very quickly. And I'm thinking, like, this is fun. Like, this is awesome. Like, what is this counterculture punk thing that I've stumbled upon? Like, I really love this. And so, between him and like Jared Kimber and Daniel Norcross, like
Zoltz
Nigel
was on as well, wasn't
on Andy Zoltzman would
he?
come
Yeah.
on a little later, get involved a bit later, but he was drawn to it as well. I think it just had a really sort of magical energy, particularly in those early days. And I know they're still around now as guerrilla cricket, but and it's great. It's not bad or anything, but I suppose it was a different era then. It was just one of a kind. There was nothing else like it. You know, online cricket commentary. Nobody was commentating on things online, engaging with their audience in real time on Twitter, reading out tweets live on the show. Like, everybody does this now, but at the time nobody did it. It was really clever. It was really sort of a really exciting environment to be in. So where I lived at the time, I had to drive past Lords and the Oval to get there, but I did, and I did that for like years and years and years for no money. It was just like fun. I just went for
Yeah.
fun. I did it. And then alongside that, comedy was developing reasonably well. Someone heard me on Test Match Special, on Test Match Sofa at the time, and said, "Hey, do you fancy a few stints on some county cricket commentary?" I was like, "Yeah, love to." Went and did some stuff on Middlesex. They again sort of put me in a bit of a box. They wanted me to talk about comedy and the things that I was doing, the people I was working with, because I was supporting some pretty big names at the time in the world of comedy. So that sort of plodded along, and like I didn't really have a professional into cricket till Isha Guha made it happen for me. So I remember Guerrilla Cricket had secured the rights, the official broadcasting rights to Ireland's first ever Test match, which was against Pakistan in Malahide. And so they called me. They're like, "Hey, you want to come and commentate this in Ireland? Like, we don't really have money, but place to stay, and it'll be fun." And I was like, "Yeah, I could take 3-4 days out of my life to go and do this. This will be fun." So I went to Ireland, did that, and when I got off the plane back in London, I had a voicemail from Isha saying, "Are you free to do a demo for a podcast?" And I was like, "Yeah, for sure." 250 quid. She said, "Yeah, no problem. I can do that for 250 quid. 250 quid, a lot of money to me. So I'll
Yeah.
set up, no problem at all." Still is if anybody ever wants to book me. Like I thought, okay. Now, what I didn't know at the time was this was kind of a big project. So Isha had been given her own podcast by the BBC, which would discuss South Asian cricket, and it was called the Dusra.
Mm,
Now, she didn't tell me any of this. She just said to me, "Turn up." What I didn't know is nobody really at the BBC knew who I was or cared and were interested in bigger names like Ramesh Ranganathan. He was very, very popular already at that point. Paul Chowdhury, what have you. There were so many, famous comedians. Tez wasn't quite at that level now. Tez is there now for sure, but like at the time they were the name. They were looking for a big name, and I
yeah.
was somebody with like 1,400 Twitter followers and like nothing, no real credibility as far as they were concerned. But Isha really fought for me, and as a compromise, they'd agreed to let me do the demo, thinking possibly that who's this guy. But Isha really fought for me. She really liked me. We had a really good friendship, and she'd always been incredibly supportive, and still is to this day. And so she like brought me on without ever putting any of that pressure on me. I had no idea what was riding on it. I was there to talk nonsense about cricket and pick up 250 quid. But as it happened, I did a good job. I was very funny, according to those guys. And they said, like, right, how would you like to do this once a week? I was like, yeah, I'd happily do that. And then that led to me getting chances to commentate on some cricket for the BBC because they realized that this guy's knowledge as well as a bit of entertainment. And he's like got a nice way about him, is what they said. They trained me a little bit more, gave me more guidance, polished me around the edges, gave me a chance. And then way later in 2020, during COVID, I got to do my first test match on Test Match Special, which was Pakistan, England versus Pakistan. That was the first of up to now 8 test matches I've done for the BBC. So yeah, that's a whistle stop guide to my
Yes,
entry.
excellent. Yeah. Sounds like everybody needs an Isha in their life.
Everybody needs. If you listen, Isha is phenomenal, and she's so fiercely loyal to the people that she cares about, and she cares about a lot of people. But she's really like, like in other industries, in various industries, maybe in this industry, I haven't really had any negative experiences, but like oftentimes you'll have somebody who breaks a barrier and then they pull the ladder up from behind them and they just think, I don't want any competition. I don't want to bring anybody else through. I don't want any blah, 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 blah. There is not an ounce of that in Isha. She always wants to do the right thing, the honorable thing. Everybody has insecurities, but she's like, if she has any, I've never seen them. She's just been so kind, so giving, always sort of checking in, making sure I'm okay. And she's like a good 4, 5, maybe 6 years younger than me. But she always has sort of older sister energy with me,
Mm.
despite the fact that she's younger. So yeah, I mean, I'm immensely grateful to Isha because like she opened the door and I sealed it shut. I'm like, I'm in now. I'm in, and I love it.
Yeah, you're in the circle. Talking about that sort of type of thing, but family support wise, and obviously we're both brown, and I was also quite lucky in terms of family always been very supportive of my colourful life and career. Have you had the same thing, or did you find that, or did you have any sort of issues and stuff around? No, don't do this. Become a doctor or an engineer or any of that stuff.
So it's never become a doctor or an engineer. My dad was really disappointed the day I decided to give up playing cricket. So I think he always wanted me to play cricket, and I showed some talent for it at a young age. Uh, so we moved up more. So my brother had a bit of talent. I had a little bit more than my brother, and now my nephew has more than both of us. Uh, like that was his dream, was to watch his kid play cricket. I don't know if he had a country in mind. Maybe it was England, maybe it was Pakistan. Who knows? But I got to a point. I played reasonably. I got to a point where I felt like I'd plateaued and discovered, other things in life that I wanted to think about and perform and study, and you start to notice girls, and everything is different from that point. So yeah, well, this is it, right? So I mean, when I look back, I think if I made a few different choices, maybe, but I don't really regret it. I still play cricket. I enjoy my cricket. I don't like to put too much pressure on it. I'm not trying to, be like Ben Stokes. I'm only trying to be Ben Stokes on a very small, a very scaled down version of Ben Stokes. So that's what I enjoy now. And yeah, they never said to me, like, they liked that I was academic. I think they were keen for me to have a grounding in education. They never really pushed me. I mean, I did my undergraduate in English literature, so and that's already non-traditional
Hmm.
from a South Asian perspective. But because like both my other siblings were quite accomplished, I think they felt like, let's let him do what he wants a little bit. They did express concern when I went full time with comedy. I had a stable sort of job at the time, and I gave that up to go full time in comedy. And they weren't, they were just expressing their concern. They were never sort of emotional about it. They were quite pragmatic about it. And now they're my biggest fans, biggest supporters. If I'm posting content online, the first like is from mum. Phone call to dad after any match that I've been commentating on, usually with notes and clarification. So this is great. They've been awesome, and like the credit doesn't really go to them; it goes to my siblings for doing so well that they were like, he's a free hit.
Yeah, I mean, I was lucky as well. My parents have always been very supportive. In fact, as before we started, I told you I'd made that short feature for the BBC around Tiger Pataudi when the England India series was on, and it made I think every member of my extended family has seen it thanks to my dad. It's like, you should watch this. He's done a very good job. That sort of type
It's a
of thing.
fascinating story. It's a
Oh,
fascinating
it's
story.
amazing. Yeah, yeah. He's and it all around, and it was a coincidence. I had emailed Aggers about commentary, and he said, "Go and record something and send it to me." Live in Winchester, as I told you. Went down to the college and they had a game on, and my mate's the cricket master there. Done ball by ball, as you know, is a tough gig, especially doing it by yourself. And so, I'd done some research. I knew Douglas Jardine had gone there, so I'd done a bit of research, but I didn't know Tiger Pataudi had gone there. And then a series of coincidences later, I end up on the telly. So it just shows, doesn't it? If you don't go, you'll never know, as they say.
Absolutely. And it also just like asking a question, making that first step. Sometimes, like people, I've done this myself, but you sort of think through a whole process and talk yourself out of it a little bit. Like, oh, if I do that, I'll have to do that, and they might say this, and and then you just don't
Yeah,
do anything. But take a shot, man. Shoot your shot. You
yeah,
never know who will help
exactly.
you.
What's the
You might
worst
get a
that could
message.
happen, right?
Exactly. Exactly.
Yeah, and this is what this is all about. As you know, my whole transition from being my old life of a really bad entrepreneur to being a cricket broadcaster. This is the journey we're on. So you know,
Why do you call yourself a bad entrepreneur? I'm just curious. Sorry, I know it's
no,
your
I
interview.
don't.
But I'll
Yeah,
ask you.
no, I don't. I call myself a crap entrepreneur.
Well, yes,
Yeah, that's right. So
important
it's
distinction.
I tell you what. I mean, it isn't, and so bit of therapy. So when I decided that. So I'd had this business that hadn't gone very well recently. The others had gone all right and whatever. And I just didn't want to do it anymore. And so I started writing a book, and I called it 30 Years of Failing Slowly. And it was my life story. And it wasn't a case that I thought of myself as a failure. It's just that life, when you don't have a plan, life takes you that way. And actually, if you have a plan, life takes you that way. And the gap in the middle was the 30 years of failing slowly. So my crapness was because I didn't enjoy it, and I wasn't very good at it. I was really good at some stuff, fun
Mm.
enough, the talking and the writing part, but I wasn't very, and I didn't care about numbers or balance sheets and any of that type of stuff. But because of having a degree, business studies degree, I thought, listen, I'm going to be a great entrepreneur and sit on Dragon's Den type thing. And I just wasn't very good at it. And it took me a long time to understand that actually direction was this one, but I went on that one. So that's kind of that is that story. So, and it will, when I do finish the book, it'll end up me being on TMS, basically.
There you go. There
There you
you got
go.
your. It's going to work out like 4 or 5 chapters, I think, towards the end.
Yeah, yeah, exactly. Just draft them all out and we'll go from there. Listen, mate, I always say it's 15 minutes. It hasn't been to date, but 25 is not bad, given the fact you asked me a question as well. But good luck in everything you do. And Aatif Nawaz, thank you very much for being on Close of Play.
My pleasure. Thanks for having me. And sorry, I know I did go on a little bit, but
No, it's
yeah,
very good.
when you got the best job in the world, you want to talk about it.
Exactly. Yeah, it's one I want to have as well, as I said. Thanks, Aatif.
Cheers, bud.
Cheers, mate.